Corinne, and welcome to Your Mileage May Vary, an introduction to Formula One racing. This first video is going to be a crash course for you to know a little bit more about Formula One as we head into the 2024 season. The reason I'm calling this Your Mileage May Vary is Formula One is a Your Mileage May Vary sport, which is what I love about it. You can pay as much or as little attention to it and still get a lot of enjoyment out of it. So, instead of getting into the how or the what of Formula One, I'm going to start with the why. Why watch Formula One? Firstly, Formula One is almost a year-round sport with a month break in the summer. While the season is long, races aren't every weekend, so it won't tie up every weekend. Also, races are relatively short,
usually lasting anywhere between 80 to 100 minutes, so about an hour and a half.
If you watch in the United States on ESPN2, there are no commercials during the race, even if they stop, which to me is kind of a positive. Another point in Formula One's favor is the amount of teams and the amount of drivers. Unlike large sports in the United States like the MLB, NFL, that sort of thing, there are only 10 teams with 2 drivers apiece, and they all race every weekend. So you don't have to keep track of what teams are racing each weekend. There are 10 of them. There are 2 drivers. All 20 drivers race every weekend. So within that, if you wanted to learn every driver in the sport, you're only learning 20 drivers. If you only wanted to learn your team, that's only 2 drivers. Or you can just follow your driver and not pay attention to anybody else. If we look at other major sports in the United States, the NFL has 53 players per team, the MLB allows 26 players per team, and the NBA allows 15 players per team. With Formula One, it is a truly international sport. There are 24 races, and of those 24 races, only 2 countries hold more than one race, but never at the same track. So each weekend is different, each location is different, each track is different. So there's a lot of variety, and usually with Formula One in the pre-show, they'll give you a lot of history of the place they're in and of the track. So it's really fun and kind of educational for each week. You're never going to see the same race twice. So now that you kind of have an idea of what makes Formula One fun and unique to watch, we're going to move into the what is Formula One. Formula One, which was founded in 1947, is the highest level of international single-seater racing. With that, Formula One, there's only one driver in the car, and that driver is the only driver throughout the whole race. In the United States, we have 2 similar competitions, which are NASCAR and IndyCar, but they are not the same because they primarily stay in the United States, but in other tracks in North America as well from time to time.
So, where does it take place? Here's a good overview of the 2024 season looking at a map. My map does cut off Australia, which I don't know how it did that, but just hang with me. In 2024, the season starts on March 2nd in Bahrain, which is a kingdom in Western Asia, and it'll end on December 8th in Abu Dhabi, which is in the United Arab Emirates, which is also in Western Asia. There'll be 24 Grand Prix in 2024, which is the most ever on a calendar. 18 of those Grand Prix will be normal weekends, and 6 will include sprint races. The 2024 calendar hits 5 of the 7 continents, excluding Africa and Antarctica. There have been Grand Prix in Africa before, there's just not currently one on the calendar. 8 of the Grand Prix will be in Asia, 1 will be in Australia, 9 will be in Europe, and 2 of those Grand Prix will be in Italy, 1 at Monza and 1 at Imola. There's 1 Grand Prix in South America in Brazil, and there are 5 in North America. 3 of those races are in the United States, and 2 of those races, the race in Miami and the race in Las Vegas, have started within the past 5 years. So the 1 race in Texas at Circuit of the Americas is the more traditional American race.
So Formula One runs 2 championships simultaneously every single year.
Here is a better visual of the 2 competitions in Formula One. So the one most people care about is the World Drivers' Championship, which discusses the driver, the individual person, and the team they're on. So this year, the winner of 2023, or last year, pardon me, the winner of 2023's World Drivers' Championship was Max Verstappen, who drove for Red Bull. So the driver and the team. Team-based aspect of this is the World Constructors' Championship. So World Constructors' Championship deals with the manufacturer, who manufactures the chassis, which is the makeup of the car. So the body, how things are set up. They also discuss the tires and the engine and things like that. So both matter because both bring in prize money, and that prize money trickles down throughout the whole team, and it can be used to develop facilities or bring in new people, generally make things better outside of having new investors come in. And then we move to how to win the World Constructors Championship, because this is, again, the team element. So the first thing you do is develop a good car. So that's a good engineering thing, and then having a reliable engine, which is something that's actually a very big deal in Formula One. And then a good knowledge of each and every one of the tracks, because you can adjust the car as you go, not only making it better, but making it better on certain tracks. And then the second step is gaining the most points as a team. So each team, as I said, has 2 drivers in each and every race. Some teams have 1 or 2 reserve drivers in case something goes wrong with one of their full-time drivers, but they're normally not involved. Usually it takes both drivers placing high to win the World Constructors Championship, but not always. Last year that wasn't really feasible. But most of the time, if you want to win the World Drivers' Championship and the World Constructors' Championship, you have to have a strong team of drivers. Then we move into hitting the winning point. So this is the technical definition. When it's no longer mathematically possible for another constructor to overtake your points, regardless of the outcome of the remaining races. All rankings matter. And then, like I said, why does placing high matter? World Constructors Championship wins equals prize money. That prize money helps sustain the teams, develop cars, develop drivers, gain better sponsors, just generally look better. So while the World Drivers' Championship is what most people see, the World Constructors' Championship is equally as important in Formula One.
If you have the same amount of points as somebody else by the end of the year, whoever's been on the podium, and the podium is P1, so the first place, P2, which is the second place, or P3, which is the third place, will be ranked higher in the World Drivers' Championship. This happens pretty consistently and happened last year, so it is important to know. Now we're going to talk about the race weekend. There are 2 types of race weekends this year, the traditional race format and the sprint race.
And here's the table for points in both the traditional weekend and the sprint race weekends. So in both traditional and sprint races, there'll be a Grand Prix or a race. So that top table will show you the points for that. So in a full-length Grand Prix, the 1st through 10th place finishers earn points. And then there's an additional point earned for fastest lap. You can only get the fastest lap point, though, if you finish within the top 10. So if you finish 11th, but you have the fastest lap, it doesn't really matter. On here as well as the points for a shortened race. So maybe once a season, a race ends up getting called early for weather or accidents. A lot of things happen. So the FIA this year has given a specific amount of points for shortened races. And then the second format, the sprint race, the top 8 finishers get points. And it's a little bit more straightforward with how many points they get. As you can see, it just reverses. So if you're the first place finisher, you get 8 points. If you're the 8th place finisher, you get 1 point, and there's no fastest lap awarded there.
The race weekends consist of a 4-day stretch. However, that first day of every race weekend is a press day, so you don't really have to pay attention too much unless you're a diehard fan. Usually, race weekends start on a Thursday with press day and end on a Sunday, which is race day. However, in 2024, there'll be multiple races that start on a Wednesday with a press day and end on a Saturday as a race day. So let's start on the regular weekend. As I said, the first day of any race weekend is press day, which is not normally televised. The second day of a regular weekend involves 2 free practices. So with every team, every weekend is a different weekend. You can either upgrade the car for the car itself or upgrade it for the track. And those first 2 free practices on that second day of the week involve the driver getting comfortable on the track, seeing the conditions, whether the track's been repaved, whether weather is supposed to be bad, whether their tires are different, the upgrades to the car. That's the first day of the weekend. Third day of the race weekend and the second day on the track involves 1 final free practice and then qualifying. Qualifying is possibly the most important element to racing in Formula One. Qualifying happens every weekend, and qualifying tells each driver where they'll start the race on the grid. They do not in Formula One at any point just stick them on the grid based on how they're standing in the championship. Every single weekend you qualify, and then that's how you start. And if you qualify well, that means you can stay ahead. If you qualify poorly, it means you have to make up a lot of that time. And then the final day is race day. Nothing else happens on race day besides the race, so you won't see them practicing, you won't see them doing any sort of work to the car. They will have the driver's parade, they'll do the national anthem of whatever country they're in, and then they'll race. And that's that. And now we're moving on to the sprint weekend. So sprint weekends are really hotly contested as they're pretty relatively new to Formula One, and fans and drivers alike kind of debate about whether they're worth it.
What I mean by worth it is there's a lot of time and effort put into sprints on top of wear and tear on the car.
In 2024, the sprint race weekend format has changed from previous years. So this year, instead of the sprint qualifying and the sprint being on the same day, the sprint qualifying and the sprint will be on separate days. So this is going to be a really interesting thing to see as to whether this will change the impact of the sprints and of the races. So the first day of the weekend is press. The second day, instead of 2 free practices, there will be 1 free practice, and then they'll qualify for the sprint. The sprint qualifying and the race qualifying are 2 different things. So that second day will be 1 free practice followed by the sprint qualifying. The sprint qualifying and the race qualifying will be 2 different things. Then the next day, we'll have the sprint itself and then the qualifying for racing. So again, the sprint results and the qualifying results will not be intermixed. So the qualifying results after the sprint will be for that race on the race day. Just like with the traditional weekend, there will be nothing on the race day except the race. Moving on to the teams. I'll be presenting the teams in the order they were in the World Constructors' Championship last year. This is just the easiest way to do it. I'm also going to try to be very, very unbiased in this. I'll be doing separate videos on each of the teams to give you a little bit more in-depth information. But if you're watching this just as a crash course to be able to watch a race, I don't want you to go in with any biases. I want you to make your driver decision just based on facts. Maybe 1 or 2 drivers, not so much. But I'm going to try my best, so stick with me. So the first team in the World Constructors' Championship last year, with also the first place driver from Austria, is Red Bull Racing. They are also one of the 2 teams that has a sister team, which means that Red Bull owns Red Bull Racing and also VCarb, which is another team we'll talk about later. These 2 teams will be the only teams that are in the same video because you can't talk about one from the other. A little bit more about Red Bull. So Red Bull joined the competition in 2005. In 2004, the Red Bull people purchased the Jaguar F1 team, rebranded it as Red Bull, and put them on the track. Since then, they've won 6 World Constructors' Championships and 6 World Drivers' Championships, 3 with former world champion Sebastian Vettel and 3 with current world champion Max Verstappen. While each team is supposed to have a differently designed car and chassis, Red Bull has been in the past and also last year has been giving parts to VCarb. Before I get started on the drivers for this team, I'm going to be going in seniority order with every team with the driver. So whoever's been with the team the longest will be the first driver I talk about. Another interesting point about Formula One is that each car is numbered, and if you're the world champion, you're allowed to put the number 1 on your car. So the number 1 car and number 1 in the world, Belgian-born but drives under the Dutch flag, 26-year-old Max Verstappen. Max is the 3-time world champion, but I do want to put a little asterisk here. This is open to discussion. However, for the record, Max has won 3 world championships on paper. Max debuted in Formula One in 2015 with a team called Toro Rosso, which is now Team VCarb. He was promoted to Red Bull in 2016. Max is also the youngest person to ever drive in Formula One as he debuted at 17. His teammate, the number 11 car, 34 years old from Mexico, Sergio Perez. Sergio, or Checo, which is what most people call him, came second in the World Drivers' Championship. Checo debuted in Formula One in 2011 with Sauber. He joined Red Bull in 2021, leaving Racing Point, which is now Aston Martin. And he is currently suffering from what's known as the Red Bull second seat curse, but he's still standing. And this will be his 14th season in Formula One. Our second team in the World Constructors' Championship in 2023 is Mercedes. Mercedes originally entered Formula One in 1954. They departed Formula One in 1955 after an accident at Le Mans. In 1994, Mercedes began to supply an engine to Formula One teams, but they did not have an official team. In 2009, Austrian billionaire Toto Wolff purchased the Braun Formula One team. In 2010, rebranded it as Mercedes. Since 2010, Mercedes has won the World Constructors' Championship 8 times, and the World Drivers' Championship 7 times, most recently in 2020 with driver Lewis Hamilton, but their other world champion is Nico Rosberg, who won in 2016 and then promptly retired. Mercedes manufactures all of their own parts and their own engine, and they also supply engine to 2 other teams. Moving on to their drivers. Their senior-most driver is a very special man in Formula One, and arguably the greatest of all time.
Car number 44, the 39-year-old from Britain and 7-time world champion, Sir Lewis Hamilton. Lewis came in 3rd in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023.
As I said earlier with Max, Lewis is a 7-time world champion because it is very argued about whether he is 7 or 8-time world champion. Lewis is a very special driver for multiple reasons. He is tied currently with 7 World Drivers' Championships with Michael Schumacher. He is the first black man to drive full-time in Formula One, and he's just truly unique in many other ways.
Lewis debuted in Formula One in 2007 at McLaren and proceeded to have the most dominant rookie year to date. He then won his first title at McLaren in 2008.
He departed McLaren for Mercedes in 2012, where he's won his 6 additional championships. However, this is Lewis's last year with Mercedes in a very shocking move. On February 1st, 2024, it was announced that Lewis will be departing Mercedes for Ferrari, which we will get into in the Mercedes video where I talk Lewis in depth, but also the Ferrari video. If you are more of a pop culture person and are watching this, this is like Zayn leaving One Direction. It's absolutely wild. It still is shocking to me 2 weeks later. Moving on to the junior-most driver for Mercedes and Lewis's teammate. Car number 63, the 26-year-old from Britain, George Russell.
I also want to comment, this is a horrible picture of George's hair. It does look a lot better in motion. Also, I'm not talking about this guy named George Russell from The Gilded Age. If you watch that, this guy's name is actually George Russell. And then here's a photo of George and Lewis from when George was little.
George came in 8th place in 2023 and the World Drivers' Championship. George debuted in Formula One in 2019 with Williams, where he spent 3 years. He was promoted to Mercedes, replacing Finnish driver Valtteri Bottas. This will be George's 6th year in Formula One and his 3rd with Mercedes. He is also one of the very few drivers to have a contract past 2024. His contract with Mercedes expires in 2025. Now to our 3rd place finisher in the World Constructors' Championship in 2023, Ferrari. Ferrari was founded by Enzo Ferrari and entered Formula One in 1950. They have not missed a full season since. Ferrari is a very unique team culturally. I'm from the United States, and a good way to discuss Ferrari is every other year we go to the Olympics. And we as a country have a sense of patriotism behind a team or a athlete. So the women's US soccer team or Simone Biles, Michael Phelps. For Italians, every year is the Olympics in Formula One, and their athlete or their team is Ferrari. There is a culture and a lifestyle around Ferrari that no other country has, and it deeply impacts Ferrari as a team. Just the absolute obsession with Ferrari in Italy is crazy. Ferrari has won the World Constructors' Championship 16 times, has won the World Drivers' Championship 15 times. Their last win was in 2007 with Kimi Räikkönen. Ferrari manufactures all of their own parts, and they supply engine to other teams as well. On to our 2 drivers for Ferrari. The senior-most driver, car number 16, 26-year-old from Monaco, Charles Leclerc. Charles came in 5th in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023. Charles debuted in Formula One in 2018 with Sauber. He was then promoted to Ferrari in 2019. This will be his 7th season in Formula One and his 6th with Ferrari. Charles has a lot behind him, and the way that Italians have a very special relationship with Ferrari, Italians also have a very special relationship with Charles. He has a nickname which I'm about to butcher, which is Il Predestino, which translates out in English to the predestined. His background kind of interplays with Ferrari, and we'll get more into that in the Ferrari video. Charles extended his contract with Ferrari this year, and he has a rolling contract, which means it'll continue on. I think it technically expires in 2027. His teammate, however, is in his last year at Ferrari. Car number 55, the 29-year-old from Spain, Carlos Sainz Jr. Carlos came in 7th in 2023 in the World Drivers' Championship. Carlos comes from a big racing family. His father, Carlos Sainz Sr., recently won the Dakar Rally race in January 2024. Carlos last year in 2023 was the only driver not in a Red Bull to win a full-length race. He won the Singapore Grand Prix. Carlos debuted in Formula One in 2015 alongside Max Verstappen at Toro Rosso. He joined Ferrari in 2021, replacing world champion Sebastian Vettel.
Following Ferrari in 2023's World Constructors' Championship is our fourth place finisher, McLaren. McLaren debuted in Formula One in 1963 and was founded by New Zealander Bruce McLaren. They are a UK-based company with their headquarters are in Woking in the United Kingdom.
They've won the World Constructors' Championship 8 times, along with the World Drivers' Championship. Their most recent win was in 2008 with driver Lewis Hamilton. They manufacture their chassis, but they operate on a Mercedes engine. Our senior-most driver for McLaren, car number 4, 24-year-old from Britain, Lando Norris.
I do want to say this is his official 2024 F1 photo. I'm not just choosing a bad photo of him, I promise.
Lando came in 6th in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023. Lando debuted in Formula One in 2019 at McLaren, and this will be his 6th season there. Lando also holds the record for most points scored without a win in Formula One. And I really hope he wins this year just so I can stop hearing that statistic during races. Alongside Lando at McLaren, 2023's Rookie of the Year, car number 81, 22-year-old from Australia, Oscar Piastri. Oscar made his Formula One debut in 2023 at McLaren after spending a year in reserve at Alpine. Oscar's rookie year, 2023, is a very special year, as it is the first time anyone has come close to Lewis Hamilton's 2007 rookie record.
And I went in and I redid the math based on 2024 point scale, and I had to adjust the races because there were more in 2023, and some races aren't done anymore. But this is the difference just to show you how dominant Lewis has always been, and Oscar is the closest to him.
If you are a new fan to Formula One and you want to root for somebody, my suggestion would be Oscar. He's a very new face in the sport, but he's a very strong driver, very adaptable, and he's just very fun to watch. So if you're looking for somebody to root for, Oscar's your guy. As we move on to the 5th team on the grid, I do want to give a preface for this. I said earlier in the video I was going to try to deliver this as unbiased as possible. However, moving into Aston Martin, our 5th team, I may seem a little bit more excited than in the past because Aston is my team. If you are an older Formula One fan watching this with somebody, please don't cut it off. I do have a reason. But conversely, I'm a lifelong Mets fan. I live in North Carolina. I live in Panthers country, so I slightly live in a state of delusion. But I do have a lot of reasons as to why I love Aston, and I also think that they have a lot going for them. As I said, Aston Martin is the youngest team in Formula One. This version of them came into being in 2019. Before 2019, Aston had competed previously in Formula One between 1959 and 1960. So Aston came from a purchase of a previous team. In 2018, there was a team on the grid called Force India. Mid-2018, they went into bankruptcy, and Canadian billionaire Lawrence Stroll purchased them. In 2019, he rebranded them as Racing Point, and then in 2020, he purchased a stock of the Aston Martin Group, therefore being able to change Racing Point to Aston Martin in 2021, which is the brand they've stayed at. Currently, Lawrence Stroll owns about 25% of Aston Martin. Aston manufactures their own chassis, and they run on a Mercedes engine. Now we're moving into the 2 drivers for Aston. And this is where I encourage you to keep an open mind. If you are a new fan, and if you are an old fan, if you are intrigued by my perspective, not only on Aston as a team, but on these 2 drivers, I do encourage you to watch this, my Aston video, because I do have a reason.
Starting with the senior most driver for Aston Martin, car number 18, 25 years old from Canada, Lance Stroll. Lance came in 10th in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023.
One of the things about Formula One I haven't really touched on is wealth and nepotism. In Formula One, there are 2 versions of wealth. Financial wealth, and I'm not going to lie, Lance has benefited from this because Lance is the son of Lawrence Stroll. And like a different sort of currency, like social currency. So like I said with Carlos Sainz Jr., his father is currently a racing driver, and with Max Verstappen, his father also competed in Formula One.
Though I do want to state I do not endorse Jos Verstappen's behavior at all. I'm really putting this in here to make a point that there is financial as well as social currency involved in this sport.
Lance is the most clear-cut case of financial benefit. However, he himself has kind of been very open with that. I think Lance is the most misunderstood driver on the grid for multiple reasons, but primarily because his father owns the team, he doesn't have to do a lot of press stuff, and he seems to be a pretty reserved guy, which I get in Formula One. Like, you want to get to know your driver, but I'm also from North America, and every sports team just has their some dude. And to me, Lance is just the some dude of Formula One. Like, he's there to do his job and go home. Like, if you watch earlier videos of Lance, he was a lot more bubbly and cheerful.
And I know that Lance's father's money did ease the way for him in Formula One, but he did debut in Formula One before his father even considered purchasing Racing Point and Aston Martin, and I don't think any person is subject to death threats because Lance is the one driver who cannot do meet and greets due to the consistent negativity around him. So let's get into a little bit more of his background. Lance Stroll debuted in Formula One in 2017 with Williams after a very dominant Formula 3 season. He spent 2 years in Williams, being replaced by George Russell, and then he moved to Racing Point, which is now Aston Martin. This will be his 8th season in Formula One and his 6th with Racing Point / Aston. On top of all of that, 2023 was a pretty rough year for Lance, as in the preseason he broke both wrists and a toe. However, he only missed one race, which was later in the season at Singapore after a pretty bad accident. I think he will be talking about it on season 6 of Drive to Survive, which I do not watch, but I am hoping that people's opinions of him change after that if he does open up.
The junior most driver for Aston, however, the senior most driver in Formula One, car number 14, the 42-year-old from Spain, Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso came in 4th in 2023, and he is a 2-time world champion. Fernando debuted in Formula One
in March 2001 with a team called Minardi, which now operates on the grid as VCARB.
He started racing before Oscar was born.
Then he moved to Renault, where he won his 2 world championships in 2005 and 2006.
Then he moved to McLaren in 2007, where he was teamed up with rookie Lewis Hamilton. We could probably spend about half an hour going on about Fernando's history in Formula One, but the big statements about him after that is that he left Formula One in 2019 after a year with McLaren, and he rejoined Formula One in 2021 with Alpine. He left Alpine in 2022 to join Aston Martin, replacing outgoing driver and former world champion Sebastian Vettel. And you may be thinking, I like him because he has a lot of history in Formula One. That's not it. This man has been openly investigated by the FIA, which is the body of Formula One, twice for spying and for fraud. And he's managed to stay on the grid. He is infamous on the track and hysterical off the track. Some people call him the Shakespearean villain of Formula One. Some people call him a villain in general. But genuinely, he is such an interesting driver. He can make anything work. He's a very strategic and talented man. I'm going to leave a link below of a good example of this from the 2023 season. The last 3 laps at Interlagos, which is in Brazil, he shouldn't have been able to make the car do that. And that's one of the reasons I love this man. And just, he embodies what is entertaining and interesting for me in Formula One. And we'll get more into that in the Aston video, because I have a feeling I'm going to be talking about Fernando Alonso for a good 75 minutes. Following Aston, the previous team for Fernando Alonso is Alpine. So if you speak English and you're going to see the title, you're going to think this word is Alpine. It's Alpine. They are a French company. Alpine is a subsidiary of Renault, which is how this team first entered and is the manufacturer for their engines. Alpine is just like a little company within Renault, and they rebranded to sell those cars, but it's not been going well. Alpine first entered Formula One in 1977 under their parent company, Renault. Renault left Formula One in 1986, returned in 2002, and then proceeded to win their 2 world championships in 2005 and 2006 with Spanish driver Fernando Alonso. Renault, as I said, manufactures their own engine and their own chassis, and they are the only people to operate with the Renault engine on the grid. Outside of Ferrari, Alpine is the only team that has the possibility of being a national team. as they are the only French team on the grid. They are also the only team that has a team that is a nationality and both of their drivers being the same nationality. So they are French and their two drivers are French. However, Alpine is the one team that's on the verge of something happening. Every team in Formula One has something going on behind the scenes, has their own drama and their own intrigue. Alpine, like, there is a meme about Alpine, like a running joke that there are 3 employees at Alpine and 2 of them are their drivers, because the personnel changes over at Alpine within the past 3 years have been intense and confusing.
In 2023, a group of Canadian and American celebrities, including Ryan Reynolds, bought a share in Alpine. So we're going to see where that goes.
The senior most driver for Alpine, and I think probably the senior most employee at Alpine, is car number 31, the 27-year-old from France, Esteban Ocon. Esteban came 12th in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023. Esteban, as one of the 2 drivers, the other being Lewis Hamilton, who truly came from very modest means to become a driver in Formula One. Lewis's father worked 4 jobs to allow him to compete, but Esteban's family sold their house and lived in an RV for a couple of years. So I think knowing that about Esteban is super important to understand his driving style and the way things are. Esteban debuted in Formula One in 2017 at Force India, where he spent 2 seasons. He was released from his contract in 2019 when Lawrence Stroll rebranded. He was replaced by Lance Stroll. Ironically, though, his best friend is Lance Stroll. Esteban returned to Formula One in 2020 with Renault, where he's been ever since. He stayed through the rebrand. He had a multi-year contract, which ends in 2024. Esteban has a very big history with Alpine, but he also has a very big history with the junior most driver for Alpine, car number 10, 28-year-old Pierre Gasly. Pierre came 11th in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023. Pierre debuted in Formula One in 2017 as well. He debuted at Toro Rosso. He was briefly promoted to Red Bull, and then he was demoted back to Toro Rosso, which then got rebranded as AlphaTauri. He left AlphaTauri in 2022, replacing outgoing driver Fernando Alonso, but also reserve driver Oscar Piastri.
Also, I stole this meme off Tumblr. Whoever made it, thank you.
This will be his 2nd year at Alpine. Our 7th team in the World Constructors' Championship in 2023 is Williams Racing. Williams is a very long-standing team in Formula One, as they were founded in 1977 under Sir Frank Williams. Williams has won the World Constructors' Championship 9 times. Most recently, they won the World Drivers' Championship in 1997 with Canadian driver Jacques Villeneuve. Though Mercedes and Williams are not sister teams, the Williams is considered the junior team for Mercedes, and they've promoted such drivers as world champions Nico Rosberg and Jenson Button, and have promoted drivers currently on the grid, George Russell, Lance Stroll, and Valtteri Bottas. I haven't discussed at all until this team the team principal, which is kind of like the general manager aspect of Formula One, but I do want to talk about briefly Williams' team principal, a man named James Vowles, who is, in my opinion, the best team principal on the grid. Just truly a lovely person. Shout out to James. We're moving on. I needed to say it. I love that guy. I love him. I don't think Mike, who's the team principal for Aston, is going to retire anytime soon, but if that were to happen for whatever reason, Lawrence Stroll, please give James Vowles some money. But I really like Mike, so. The senior most driver for Williams, car number 23, British born but races under the Thai flag, 27-year-old Alexander Albon. Alex came in 13th in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023.
Alex entered Formula One in 2019 with Toro Rosso, and mid-season was promoted to Red Bull, where he lasted 2 seasons. Alex then spent a year in reserve before moving to Williams, replacing outgoing driver George Russell.
I can't wait to talk about Alex more in the Williams video, but it's one of those things where if I start talking about him now, I'm not going to stop. Joining Alex at Williams in his 2nd year at Williams and his 2nd year in Formula One, car number 2, the 23-year-old from the United States of America, Logan Sargent. Logan came in 21st in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023. I do want to say, yeah, there are only 20 drivers on the grid. How could he come in 21st? It's a long story. But And it's very atypical. It's just a long story. Let's talk more about Logan. Logan was born in Florida in the United States of America. He moved to Switzerland at age 11, which gives him somewhat of a strange situation. He's been in Europe over half of his life now, so he's somewhat of a man without a country because Europeans never consider him European because he was born in the United States and he still speaks with an American accent. But Americans, especially American pundits, don't really consider Logan an American.
But I don't understand why Danica is considered an expert, so.
Doesn't really have a base. To me, if Williams was to market Logan to the American market, there would be a lot more interest behind him because I think anybody loves an underdog, and I do think Logan does have somewhat of an underdog story. And Logan is also super interesting. He's the first American to drive in Formula One full time since Scott Speed in his 2005 and 2006 seasons. And he's the first American to score a point in Formula One since Mario Andretti in 1981.
Moving on to our 8th place finisher in the 2023 World Constructors Championship, VCarb, aka Visa Cash App, aka Toro Rosso, aka AlphaTauri.
As I said with Red Bull, they are sister teams. Red Bull purchased the team Minardi in 2005 and rebranded them as Toro Rosso in 2006 and put them on the grid where they've been ever since. They went from Toro Rosso to AlphaTauri to VCarb. VCarb has produced some really great drivers such as world champion Sebastian Vettel and current world champion Max Verstappen, with other drivers such as Daniel Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz Jr., Pierre Gasly, and Alexander Albon. Both of our drivers for VCarb are people who got their start at VCarb, but in two separate ways. The senior-most driver, car number 22, the 23-year-old from Japan, Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki came in 14th in the 2023 World Drivers' Championship. Yuki debuted in Formula One in 2021 with AlphaTauri, which is now VCarb. This will be his 4th season in that seat and his 4th season in Formula One. I didn't really get too much into the Red Bull machine in the Red Bull part, and I'm trying to hold my tongue about it now. But Yuki has faced a lot of issues getting into and staying in Formula One, mostly from one man who I loathe with my entire being. But Yuki did bring in the primary amount of points for AlphaTauri, VCarb, I'm leaving that in there, in 2023, and I'm very excited for him to have a good season now. His teammate also got his start at VCarb, but in a very different way. Car number 3, the 34-year-old from Australia, Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel came in 17th in 2023. Daniel debuted with Toro Rosso in 2011. He was then promoted to Red Bull in 2013, but chose to leave the Red Bull family in 2017 due to some ongoing issues. Number 1, reliability issues with the engine, but number 2, some favoritism issues within the Red Bull machine, maybe by one certain person. He moved from Renault to McLaren and then was released from his contract in 2022 by McLaren to be replaced by fellow Australian driver Oscar Piastri. He did not have a seat in Formula One in 2023 in the beginning of the season, but after a turbulent debut by driver Nick De Vries, he replaced Nick at AlphaTauri, which is now VCarb, in the middle of the season.
Then, after an incident in qualifying with fellow Australian Oscar Piastri, Daniel did have to take an additional 2 months off to heal because he broke his hand.
There's going to be a lot of discussion about Daniel, and that he is the reason that the VCarb and Red Bull videos will be in one, because you can't talk about Red Bull without talking about VCarb, and you can't talk about Daniel Ricciardo without talking about Red Bull, and you can't talk about Max Verstappen without talking about Daniel Ricciardo. In 9th place in the 2023 World Constructors Championship, we have a team who will be operating under several names in the 2024 championship. I'm going to go with Sauber because that is the core company, but they'll also be known as Stake, Kick, or if you're super lazy and want to refer to them as the team that was sponsoring them last year, Alfa Romeo. Sauber has been competing in Formula One on and off since 1950. They are a Swiss company. However, they will be purchased and turned into the Audi team in 2026. They have a Ferrari engine and are also considered the Ferrari junior team in the way that Williams is considered the Mercedes junior team. They aren't sister companies, but they are somewhat hand in hand. Sauber has created such drivers such as Checo and Charles Leclerc. The two drivers for this team have been in the seats the same amount of time, so I'm going to be discussing the senior most driver in Formula One first. That man, car number 77, 34 years old, from Finland, is Valtteri Bottas. Valtteri came in 15th in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023. Though he placed 15th in 2023 in the World Drivers' Championship, it does not reflect what kind of driver he is. Out of every driver on the grid, he is the person with the fourth most wins, following Lewis, Max, and Fernando. He debuted in Formula One in
2013 with Williams.
He was later promoted to Mercedes in 2017, following the sudden departure of 2016 world champion Nico Rosberg. He was replaced at Mercedes by George Russell and then moved to Sauber. I think his goal is to stay with them until they become Audi and then keep that seat, which I think would be really smart for them. He's really blossomed in his time there, and currently he has a platinum blonde mullet, which I think says a lot about him. His teammate, car number 24, the 24-year-old from China, Guanyu Zhou. He came in 18th in 2023's World Drivers' Championship. He is the first Chinese driver in Formula One, and he is a relatively relaxed dude. He also comes from a bit of money, so like Lance, he has a lot of pay driver stuff. Now we move to the final team on the grid, the second youngest team in Formula One, but also the team that geographically is closest to me, Haas. Haas is the only American team on the grid, as their headquarters are in Kannapolis, North Carolina, which is a 45-minute drive from my home.
This is not my exact location, by the way, just a generalized idea of where I am.
Haas was founded by Gene Haas, who is an American tool manufacturer. Gene Haas got involved in motorsports in 2002 when he purchased a team in NASCAR. He still owns that team, so it was kind of logical for him to move into Formula One. He bid to enter Formula One in 2014 and joined the grid in 2016. However, after that, he has decided to not develop the car or the team any further and kind of refuses to put money into it, which is the big sticking point for Haas. I think if Gene really looked at Aston and what Lawrence Stroll is doing over there and saw that if you put money in, you'll get results and move up the grid, maybe something might happen. But I don't really know why this man is in Formula One, because it doesn't seem like he cares too much. Like Haas, the two drivers for Haas have very turbulent careers in Formula One. The senior most driver, car number 20, the 31-year-old from Denmark, Kevin Magnussen. Kevin came in 19th in 2023. Kevin debuted in Formula One in 2014 with McLaren. He kind of got the short end of the stick there, and then he bounced around and left Formula One, worked as a welder. He returned to Formula One with Renault, and then he moved to Haas in 2017. He was briefly removed and put as the reserve driver for Haas in 2021, but then was promoted back to a full-time seat in 2022. This will be his 9th full Formula One season and his 7th with Haas.
And then the junior most driver for Haas, car number 27, 36-year-old from Germany, Nico Hülkenberg, and Nico came 16th in the World Drivers' Championship in 2023.
Nico debuted in Formula One in 2010 with Williams, where he spent a year. Then he moved to Force India in 2012. He bounced around for a bit before getting a full-time seat with Haas in 2023. This will be his 12th season as a full-time Formula One driver and his 2nd season with Haas. I hope you found this video interesting and helpful. I hope I've piqued your interest in Formula One. I'll be doing videos on individual teams, but I'll also be doing a video on the season and track by track so that you can kind of see what the impact of everything is. 2024, as I said, will be the longest season, but it'll also be the reintroduction of the track in China. We're going to see a lot of things happening throughout the year as a lot of contracts are up. Lewis is moving to Ferrari, will impact a lot of things, and I hope you stick with me, and I'll see you soon.